Hello once again, and welcome to Talk with Frank. It's great to be with you, and happy Easter to all of you. And as we come to that place of Resurrection Sunday, we praise God that Jesus didn't stay on a cross. He didn't remain in a tomb, but the stone was rolled away and Jesus rose from the dead. And what a great story, or great illustration of that God rolls the stone away from our hearts, even though our sin keeps us dead, as it were, yet Jesus makes us alive. Wonderful, wonderful to know that we can celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ tomorrow. But I want to talk to you today about the end of Jesus' life. He was there on the cross, bleeding and suffering painfully, criminalized with two criminals either side of him. And yet what we notice within the crucifixion are various groups of people. Those who stay far away or stay far off and observe from a distance. They're there, but they're not at close quarters. They're at a distance. They want to associate themselves with Jesus and the crucifixion from a distance. They feel safe and secure from a distance, but they're observing what is happening also from a distance. Then there are those in the crowd, that group that came close to the crucifixion of Jesus. They remembered what Jesus said, that he'd kill this body in 3 days it will rise from the dead. They're the ones who shook their fists at Jesus, even whilst he was suffering on the cross. They showered him with accusations. They told him and shouted at him that if he could save others, why can't he save himself? They were still looking for the evidence, and yet the evidence was staring them in the face. Then there was the other group, the group of authorities that had to go through the whole process of nailing Jesus to the cross, even though Pilate tried to free Jesus, recognizing that Jesus was very important. And it was out of jealousy that the Pharisees and the religious leaders crucified him. And yet they were there. They were the ones who had to administer the torture. They were the ones who broke his body, as it were, stripped his flesh. They were the ones who hammered the nails in his hands and in his feet. They were the ones who pierced his side and saw the blood and water flow, or serum flow, from his side. They were the ones at first hand to see that he bowed his head and heard the words, "It is finished." No more could be done to Jesus. No more could be said about Jesus. It had been done. It was finished. And even the Roman soldiers, as they sat there, as it got darker and darker for 3 hours, they were dividing his clothes. So the authorities were there. They had to administer whether they agreed with it or not, but they were there. And then there were those that were closest to Jesus, the women who looked after in Jesus' ministry. The women stood there and cried and looked at Jesus' beaten body. They were the ones who later on would go to the tomb and try to embalm him with those spices. And yet they found the stone rolled away, bewildered as to what was going on. These women loved Jesus. They loved serving him. They loved being around him. And yet Jesus saw them. He saw their care and their love and their support for him. And even in that, they felt helpless. And then the final group were his disciples. Those that were in the Garden of Gethsemane, who fell asleep, who didn't protect him, who didn't stand up for him when the religious leaders came with the mob and arrested Jesus. Instead, they fled in fear and trembling for their own lives. Yet Jesus calls them his closest friends. Interesting that, isn't it? And I'm asking the question today, as we consider the Easter account of the life of Jesus and the final hours of Christ's suffering on the cross and the burial and then the resurrection day, is what type of crowd do we belong to? Do we stand at a distance and observe and wonder if this is truly the Son of God? Are we part of the crowd that throw insult after insult and accusation after accusation at Jesus at the cross? Are we waving our fists, shaking our heads, knowing that we're disappointed in him because he can't do a miracle while he's on the cross? Or are we part of the crowd that fear for our own lives if we associate ourselves with him? We run away instead of stand. You see, we have to make a decision. And the women had nothing else but Jesus. They looked after him. They provided for his needs whilst he was ministering on this earth. And they stood there by his cross, and tears rolled down their face as they saw their beloved Lord crucified right before them. Or maybe you would want to be part of the authorities, those that had to deal with the cross themselves, the Roman soldiers. They didn't understand. They saw an innocent man criminalized and put to death at their hands. Blood was on their hands, so to speak. Yet when Pilate washed his hands, he then put the onus upon upon the religious leaders, who said, "Crucify, crucify." And so we have to ask that question today, that as we come to Resurrection Sunday, what part of the crowd are we on this Easter Sunday? Bless you. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll speak to you again soon. God bless you.